Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Tip of the Ice-Burgh podcast, your home for Pittsburgh Penguins news and analysis. You can find us on YouTube at Tip of the Ice-Burgh, with full episodes also being posted at Nick Belsky on YouTube, or if you prefer an audio version, you can find us absolutely anywhere you get your podcasts from. Happy Thanksgiving to all of our American listeners out there, and the Penguins made sure that it was going to be a nice turkey day. You weren't going to be complaining about what happened on the famous night before Thanksgiving game at PPG Paints Arena, as they are winners. Let me not glom my sentences together. They're winners 4-2 over the red-hot Buffalo Sabres. The Sabres had won 4 of 5 games coming into that one, but the Penguins are able to stifle their offense for just long enough to hold on and then notch an empty netter at the end there from Connor Dewar. They win it 4-2, trying to get back on track here as they get very, very busy between holidays, American Thanksgiving and Christmas, playing almost every other day, starting with a back-to-back on Black Friday and the following Saturday. So I'll just say this. We mentioned it on Monday, and it's going to be a running thing here on Tip of the Ice-Burgh. The Penguins are now 1-0 since Dan Muse put the team on notice. We talked on Monday about it being an inflection point in his first season as a head coach, that first time that he really puts himself out there as, hey, I'm going to challenge my team. He did that. They had 3 days of practice, and they came out and they won a game against the Buffalo Sabres on Wednesday night. So far, so good after the Dan Muse rant. Might be a little harsh of a word, but for lack of a better term, the Dan Muse rant. Not only did we see that take place last night, we saw Tristan Jarry return from injury. We'll talk about him a little bit later. We saw Ville Koivunen return from injury. Nice to see him back on the horse after just 3 games missed. And we saw the debut of Tristan Broz, somebody who, if you listen to Penguins' game plan this week, Dan Muse said was very close to simply making the roster out of training camp. He didn't. He went down to Wilkes-Barre. He worked hard. He became the leading scorer for the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins, and then he gets his opportunity on Wednesday. 2 shots on goal, 11:30 of total ice time. There wasn't anything that was overly good, and there was nothing that was overly bad. It was an NHL debut. He didn't look tentative. He threw a body check on his first shift, which I like that. Just kind of get the nerves out and just put it into somebody else. Put it into somebody else and put them into the boards. I like it from Tristan Broz, so I'm excited to see a little bit more of him. I'm hoping that maybe we see him and Ben Kindel on a line together here at some point this weekend. Ben Kindel ate the healthy scratch as part of his development plan with the Penguins. And before we get into the mailbag, that's one thing I wanted to touch on really quickly. If you're somebody that coming into this season said, show me the kids, show me all of the kids, you're getting exactly what you wanted. So you got to be thankful for Kyle Dubas. You got to be thankful for Dan Muse, because they are giving you the most rookies in the NHL through the first 2 months of the season. Tristan Broz was the 9th rookie to play for the Penguins this season. And it's funny because coming into this year, we knew, hey, they were going to go young in some areas. But when you look at how young they've gone, it's a little remarkable, especially when you consider one of the guys that you would have expected to be part of that young core or that group of rookies playing hasn't played a single second at the NHL level. And that's Rutger McGroarty. Not only that, you look at a guy like Owen Pickering, who has played very little at the NHL level. It's been a lot of guys that you didn't expect to make an impact this quickly. Obviously, Harrison Brunick. Obviously, Ben Kindel. Didn't expect to see Sergei Murashov this early in the season, yet you've seen him. So the Penguins now lead the league with 9 rookies to suit up for them in the 2025-26 season, and it's not particularly close. The closest team is the Colorado Avalanche, who are just ridiculous this year in general, with 6. So Colorado's at 6. The Penguins have a 3-person advantage, plus you got to add on McGroarty eventually is going to play this year. You have to imagine at some point we're going to see Avery Hayes this year. So that list is only going to grow. The youth movement in Pittsburgh is for real this time. And there's a lot of talented players that really it's hard to get them all into the lineup, and it's hard to get them all opportunities. And yet we've seen Kyle Dubas and Dan Muse be able to do just that. And the good thing is they don't have a lack of options, right? You look at the AHL, Rutger McGroarty is banging on the door to come up. 3 goals in 3 games, and they're all great goals. Like, they're all not, let me go to the front of the net. Oh, tap in, goal here. They're ridiculous goals. His second one is one that stands out to me, and then I'll go to the mailbag after this. But Rutger McGroarty's second goal is the one that stands out to me the most, because the one knock on Rutger was his skating. Always. That was the thing. Hey, this is a really good prospect, but he does need to fix the skating a little bit. His second goal, he blows by 2 different defenders and just unimpeded right to the net, finishes with some soft hands and notches the goal. So he's somebody who I think is more complete of a prospect this year, noticeably, than he was last season. So I'm excited to see Rutger McGroarty. I don't know how much longer they can wait to call this kid up, because he is on an absolute tear since coming back from injury. And it looks like, while yes, it stinks that he missed, and I know it was a frustrating time for Rutger McGroarty, but it looks like he's back and better than ever. And that is a great thing for the Penguins, who right now, yes, they scored 4 goals last night. They need a little bit more on the offensive side of the puck. Like, that team that we saw in October that led the NHL in scoring, that team isn't back yet. And I think getting Rutger McGroarty into the lineup is something that's going to go a long way in that. Now, of course, there is the worry that, hey, this is a kid that has not played a lot of NHL hockey. Can it translate? I think it will with Rutger. I think the style that he plays is going to lead itself to NHL hockey. And I think he's somebody who is uniquely qualified to step in and step up at a level that we've seen from really only Ben Kindel amongst the rookies. Yes, Murashov was really good in certain instances. Yes, Artur Shilovs has been really good, and he is considered a rookie. Yes, Philip Hollander was really good, but of course, small sample size. Yes, Ville Koivunen has looked great at points, but Ben Kindel has put himself in a league of his own when it comes to Penguins rookies. I think he's going to get some company once Rutger McGroarty comes back. But that's all I'll blab on about last night's game and about the rookies. We'll obviously have plenty to discuss when it comes to those guys moving forward, but we're going to take a quick break here. When we return, answering all of your questions for the tip of the Ice-Burgh mailbag. All right, let's jump into the mailbag for this week's Thursday edition of the Tip of the Ice-Burgh. But before we get into any of that, just a reminder that if you have a question for us and you want it answered on next week's edition of Tip of the Ice-Burgh mailbag, to either drop it in the comment section below or every Tuesday, both on our YouTube channel at Tip of the Ice-Burgh and on our Twitter page at Ice-Burgh Podcast. We'll throw the bat signal up. We'll put a post up that asks for your mailbag questions. If you drop it underneath there, we will see it. And most of the time, we're going to try to get to as many or all of the questions as humanly possible. But let's kick things off with a question that came in on last week's episode in the comment section from at E7 Angle on YouTube. A question for you. Chris Johnston released his first trade board of this season, and I would be very interested in the number 3 player, Alex Tuch of the Buffalo Sabres, on the board. What do you think it would take to trade for him and sign him? We have a ton of cap space and even more going forward, so we could easily afford him. The Penguins do have a lot of cap space. Currently, I believe they have $8 million in cap space, between 8 and 11, according to Puckpedia. And going into next year, the figure is upwards of $45 million. It's fluctuated a little bit. There's going to be some changes to it. But as of right now, it's upwards of $45 million, and it's not particularly close to that level. So they do have salary cap space, which means I wouldn't be completely opposed to them bringing salary in if they believe it's going to help the team this year and beyond. So I'm glad you mentioned, trade for him and sign him, because Alex Tuch is a pending unrestricted free agent. I just don't think he is somebody that fits what the Penguins need. That's just my personal opinion. I think that if you're looking at where the Penguins are at, if they're going to try to bring in a top 6 forward, it has to be a can't miss, no doubt about it, part of the team this year and for the future. You could potentially trade Alex Tuch, but I'm not interested in what the figure would have to be. right now, I think the numbers that are being thrown around for him are upwards of $10 million. And I know the salary cap has gone up substantially over the last couple of years, and it's going to continue to go up if you believe the projections that the NHL is putting out. But I just don't think that Alex Tuch is a name that I want to fill that blank space with if I was Kyle Dubas. And again, it's a good player, but it's somebody that where the Penguins are at right now, I don't think fits very much of what they need. Let's go to this week's tip of the iceberg comment section that we had in our community page. At Evan Gray says, a short stint for Sam Poulin, where I thought he performed decent, but still gets sent down. What were your thoughts on his performance? I pretty much am in the same exact mind frame that you are, Evan. I think that Sam Poulin looked better than he ever has at the NHL level, but at the same time, I like the fact that the reason he got sent down is because Tristan Broz has been playing well, and they want to see what Tristan Broz can do, especially at third line center, because if Broz comes up, and there's another question that you asked about Tristan Broz, but if Broz comes up and proves that he can play third line center, kind of similar to the way that we saw Ben Kindel do it earlier this season, then you're in a very good position going forward beyond this season. But as far as Sam Poulin's performance, again, I thought he performed well. I thought for the first time in his career, he came up and was given a good opportunity to prove that he's been working on himself, and he is a much different player than we've seen in seasons past. I mean, there was a reason he got the call up in the first place. He had, I believe it was 15 points in 16 games at the Wilkes-Barre Scranton level, and he played well, but at the same time, you weren't able to see that offense generate high quality chances. There were some chances, and a lot of them were due to Ben Kindel, but I do think that there was more that they wanted to see from that line, and that's why they did the swap between Sam Poulin and Tristan Broz. So I'm excited to see more of Tristan Broz, but Sam Poulin, I think what he showed you is he should get another opportunity at some point this season, especially if he goes back to Wilkes-Barre and he plays the way that he had been playing. I think it's going to be hard for the Penguins to deny him another opportunity to come up and kind of show what he's worth. I thought he looked good, but I think right now they're still just trying to find pieces and what fits. And when you're doing that, if somebody comes up, doesn't kind of take the reins or take the ball and run with it, if you will, I think they're going to be cycling through those guys if that ends up being the case. But Evan, you had another question here that's, what do you project guys like Tristan Broz and Tanner Howe to be later in their careers? I try to stay away from projecting what these guys will be because development, and you can look at the Penguin system as just a microcosm over the last couple of seasons. Development is not linear, and we can project what somebody could be today, and it's going to be vastly different in 2 years, right? Will Horkoff was considered by many to be a reach for the Penguins in the first round. All of a sudden, only about 5 months later, he's looking like he could be one of the best players in that draft class because of the season that he's having with Michigan, because of the development that he had between last year before he got drafted and where he's at right now, which is leading the NCAA in scoring. He's a shoo-in for the U.S. team for the World Juniors. So I try to stay away from this, but because you asked the question, I'll give you my thoughts on where I stand today. I think Tristan Broz has the capability to be either a very good third line center or a not superstar, not star, but a contributing top six, middle six winger, more so middle six than top six. But I do think that he's somebody that has shown that if you put, a ceiling or a cap on his expectations, he's going to burst through them. He did that when he went to the University of Denver. He did that last season in his first pro year with Wilkes-Barre, and he's doing it again this year, and now he gets the opportunity at the NHL level. Tanner Howe, that's an even harder one because I had a lot of really high expectations for Tanner Howe after he was drafted. When I went back and watched him, he's a fun player to watch, but injuries really, really made last year a hard year to kind of decipher when it comes to his development path. And this year, again, it's a small sample size. So for him, I'm looking at a middle six guy. I think that right now that's where I would say he is. But again, development isn't linear, and development is something that players can either burst through and become better than you ever expected, or players can just fall flat. So I'm not going to say that that's a 100% this is how it's going to be, because I think there's going to be a lot that changes between now and in 3 years when these guys are both hopefully playing as everyday NHLers. Let's go to Aiden Rauscher 1590, who says, I'm finding a hard time finding the right place for Kevin Hayes into a healthy Penguins lineup right now. But given the injuries and this small slump in play, where do you think you can put Hayes to get the best out of him and the team? Right now, he's playing on the second line with Evgeni Malkin. I think when they're completely healthy, there's not a chance he's in anywhere near the top six. I think best case scenario for the Penguins, if they're healthy, Kevin Hayes is an ideal 13th forward. He's a reliable veteran that does have a touch of offensive ability, and something that Haley Hunter said on this week's episode of Get Me the Brandy, which is a podcast that I produce for Sportsnet Pittsburgh. She mentioned that she talked with Kevin Hayes over in Sweden. And obviously these guys all want to win, but something that Kevin Hayes mentioned is that because of guys like Crosby and Malkin, you want to win for them. You want to perform better for them. That's the kind of the thought process that Kevin Hayes has, and that's a thought process that can really permeate through a locker room, and something that I really like to see. So I think that he has a place on this team. I think he has an important voice for this team. But I think if you're fully healthy, talent-wise, he is an ideal 13th forward. Or if you want to make sure he's in the lineup, that's somebody who I think would pair really well with Connor Dewar and Blake Lizotte. I'd put him on the third line. I think he's fine. He's good enough to play on the third line, but I like what I've seen from Tommy Novak and Ben Kindel together. Tristan Broz is a guy I want to see more of. Even Sam Poulin showed me in those 2 games that I wouldn't mind seeing him get more opportunity on the Penguins' third line. Avery Hayes is a guy that could come up and play on that third line. Phil Tomasino, who knows how he responds to getting sent down to Wilkes-Barre. Maybe he comes back up and he looks like he did early in his tenure last year when he came over from Nashville. So I think there's a lot of options for the third line. Kevin Hayes is certainly one of them, but I'd like to see that be more of a Tommy Novak and the kids line. As far as the fourth line is concerned, yes, when Noel Acciari comes back, I have a hard time believing Noel Acciari is not going to be in the lineup, but him and Kevin Hayes are 2 guys that I think pair really well with Connor Dewar and Blake Lizotte, and I would not mind seeing that be the case if they end up wanting to keep Kevin Hayes in the lineup for an extended period of time. Let's go over to G-Tots on YouTube, who says, at what point do over the next 10 to 20 games, we call this tumble down the standings a regression to the mean instead of a dip in play because of injuries? At what point? I feel like it's whenever we see this team healthy, if they continue to trend in that direction. Because you look at it and they're already kind of heading in that direction. Ville Koivunen is back. Tristan Jarry is back. Justin Brazeau is skating. Noel Acciari is skating. Rickard Rakell is skating. You'd have to imagine that at some point here, I'm missing one person. I know it's going to be a while for Philip Hollander, and there's a question about him later in this mailbag, so I won't go too much into that. But the point being, their timelines are starting to come towards the end. They should start to get more players back. And once that happens, we can start to kind of really judge where this team is at. Because you're right. It is something that right now it's been a tumble down the standings. They were in third place in the Metro for the longest time. They were in first place in the NHL for a couple of days there. And then these sporadic games over the past 2 weeks matched with the fact that they haven't been playing their best hockey, matched with the fact that they've been injured in a lot of key areas, has cost them dearly. They are now sitting, as of this recording, and this is before the Wednesday night game, at least this portion of the show is, the rest of it is not. But as of this recording, they sit on the outside looking in of the playoffs the night before Thanksgiving. But I think that once they get healthy is when you can really start to judge. Healthy, and then of course, it's going to be a busy early portion of December leading into Christmas. I think once you get to Christmas, if no other major injuries happen, knock on wood, everywhere, then you can really judge what this team is. Because right now, I still think that, to me, they've been playing good hockey at certain points, and at certain points you can tell that the struggles that they have had is because they don't have a Ricard Raquel, is because they don't have a Justin Brezzo, is because they don't have a Philip Hollander that's filling out the depth of this team. So I think that now that they're starting to get healthy, once we see a Raquel come back, because really once he comes back, then you can start to kind of put the puzzle pieces back in their original positions. Then give it about 7 or 8 games and we can really see where this team is at. Let's move over to the Twitter questions that we have, starting with Zach DeRosa, who is 2 for 2 on these mailbags, getting questions in. Says, is it time to consider Rust on the third line when this team is healthy again? His production is there, but the rest of his game feels off, and it seems like Sid needs more defensive help, and then puts in parentheses McGroarty and Raquel. Well, if you're looking for defensive help, Bryan Rust is much higher on that list than Rutger McGroarty and Ricard Raquel. Yes, McGroarty does have that little touch of his 200-foot game, but it's certainly not as well-rounded as Bryan Rust's. And Ricard Raquel, underrated in his own zone, but I still would lean towards Bryan Rust being better, a more defensively responsible forward in that aspect. I don't think that you move Rust down to the third line. I think that if McGroarty continues to play at this level and gets called up, you put him with Crosby, but you keep Rust up there as well. I think Raquel is the guy I would move down to the third line. Let's not forget, before the emergence of Ben Kindel this preseason, the plan was, or at the very least, if you believe some of the words that have been spoken by Dan Muse and Kyle Dubas and from Josh Yohe of The Athletic, the plan was Ricard Raquel, third line center to start the season. Not that I believe he's going to play third line center, because you have Ben Kindel who can do that. You have Tristan Broz who can do that. You have just other options in that instance where you don't have to move Raquel out of a position that he's played for a very long time to put him in a position that he has played but has not been frequent in that role since coming to Pittsburgh. So I think if I'm moving anyone down, I'm moving Raquel down, because with Bryan Rust, the rest of his game feels off, but the rest of that entire first lines game has felt off a little bit. And some of that might be Connor Dewar. It might be the fact that just Sid has hit a lull. So has Rust. So has this entire team over the last couple of weeks. So I don't know if I'd lay it all on Bryan Rust's shoulders. I certainly wouldn't put him down on the third line. I wouldn't be opposed to doing it at some point if he hits a lull, because listen, sometimes whenever you put one of these top 6 guys in the bottom 6, it can create magic and it can create a little bit more of a robust offensive attack, which is a good thing. But I think if I'm operating with the information that I have as of right now, I would not move Bryan Rust off of Sidney Crosby's line. I would prefer to move Ricard Raquel down and see what he's able to do with Ben Kindel and Ville Koivunen, or Ben Kindel and Tommy Novak, who I think has been underrated over the past couple of games or weeks, if you will. So it's an interesting dilemma, but again, it's something that right now I don't think I would separate Bryan Rust or Sidney Crosby for the world. Let's go to Ed Helinski, who says, in your estimation, who have been the studs and who have been the duds so far this season on the Pens roster? I love it, Ed. The studs and duds, I might have to keep that around as an ongoing kind of conversation. I like it. I like the way you're thinking. So I'll give you 2 for each. And for the studs, I'll avoid the ones that are pretty obvious. Obviously, Evgeni Malkin has been a stud. Obviously, Sidney Crosby has been a stud. Obviously, Erik Karlsson has been a stud, but they're superstars. So at some point, or to some extent, you kind of expect that from them. So the 2 studs that I will highlight outside of those 3, Ben Kindel is an obvious one. Nobody expected Ben Kindel coming into camp to make the team, first of all. Second of all, make the team as the third line center. Third of all, make the team as the third line center and look better than most of the team in a red hot 8-2-2 October. And then, of course, lastly, be a guy that is heavily considered for the Calder Memorial Trophy at the end of this season. He has been everything you want a first round pick to be and he's only 18 years old. So I have a hard time not picking Ben Kindel to be a stud. And another one that maybe not as many people will pick, I think some will know who I'm going with here, Connor Dewar. And not Connor Dewar on the first line. And I mentioned this, it was either the last episode or 2 episodes ago. When your team is at its best, Connor Dewar is not a first line winger. That's nothing against Connor Dewar. That's more to do with who is out of the lineup right now. You're missing 3 or 4 guys that could go in that spot. But Connor Dewar, the way he came out this season and the way that he played, I mean, specifically, you go back to that game against the Washington Capitals and what he was able to do on the penalty kill late in that third period on the forecheck. He is a very, very big piece to this team when it's fully healthy. He is a very important piece to the penalty kill. That is a top 10 unit in the NHL. He is somebody who, I mentioned it a couple weeks ago. Everybody loved Brandon Tanev. Connor Dewar, without the weird ghost face, not weird, the awesome ghost face headshot, he is that guy. He is the character guy. He is the bottom 6 guy that has a little bit of scoring flair, but at the end of the day is just going to work his butt off day in and day out for you. And I think he's done that to a point where people are starting to recognize it. But as the season goes on, if he's put in the right positions, they're going to start to notice it 10 times more as the year goes on. Duds, there's not a whole lot of duds. There's 2 I'm going to mention because you asked the question, so I'm going to answer the question. But one of them I think could fit in the category. The other one I think is just underwhelming. I wouldn't go as far as to call him a dud. The one guy I would put in the dud category, we talked about him on Monday, is Christopher Letang. He is supposed to be in that class with Crosby, with Malkin, with Karlsson. And not only has he not been in that class, but he has been very, very far in the opposite direction. You need him to perform better. You need him to, we mentioned it on Monday's episode. He was on the ice for 7 of the 8 goals against in those 2 games on Friday and Saturday of last week. That can't happen. That cannot happen for a guy that's playing 19, 20, 21 minutes a night and is counted upon to be one of your better or top defensemen. So you just need more from Chris Letang. I would put him in the category of dud as much as I really don't want to do it. I would say that he kind of fits the description. And the other one I'll mention, like I said, I wouldn't call him a dud. I'd call him just a little underwhelming. And that's Ville Koivunen. This is a guy who at the end of last year came up and looked like he was ready for the big show. He was ready for the bright lights. He was ready to not just play at the NHL level, but fill the score sheet. I believe it was 7 assists in 8 games to end last season for Ville Koivunen. And he looked like he belonged in the top 6 alongside guys like Evgeni Malkin, alongside guys like Sidney Crosby. He looked like Ben Kindel has looked without the full 200-foot game. In the offensive zone, he looked like he belonged. This season, for one reason or another, it's just felt like, all right, he's been brought back to reality. He's been hit with a dose of adversity, if you will. Now, of course, that adversity went on to extend to an injury that cost him 3 games starting in Sweden. But I think that he's a player that if you're the Penguins, you're really hoping it starts to find that form that he had at the end of last season. Because, and you could see it before he got injured, the last 2 or 3 games, he was getting close to scoring that first NHL goal. He was starting to get opportunities, just barely missing them. So I think this is a guy that, while right now I would put him in an underwhelming category, I think it's a guy that if he can kind of pick up where he left off when he comes back from this injury, then he'll be in a good position to get that first goal to go in. And hopefully after that, the floodgates can open. Let's go to Patrick Snow to close out this mailbag segment of the Tip of the Ice-Burgh. Says, do you really think this break, referencing the Thanksgiving break, the holiday, can be used as a playoff barometer this year? The Eastern Conference is such a muddled mess. It may be until Christmas before we get a little clarity. Also, we're missing Hollander almost as much as Rax and Brazeau, and nobody mentions it. Let me start off with the comment about the standings. Obviously, you've heard myself, you've heard basically everybody that talks about hockey in general say that Thanksgiving, American Thanksgiving, that is a line of demarcation for the NHL season. It tells you kind of what your team is going to be this year. The problem, as Patrick mentions, is the East is very tight right now. 5 points. That's it. 5 standings points separates first place in the conference and 13th place in the conference. And then there's the Rangers, who are 6 points back of the Carolina Hurricanes, are currently in first place with 30 total standings points. So it is very close. And it's hard to say, hey, this is a contender for the playoffs. This is a team that's probably not going to go very far this year, because everybody is in that massive bubble of teams that have, for one point or another this season, had a good run, has also struggled at times. The Penguins just are a team that has struggled recently, but was really good to start. So it is hard to kind of sit there and say, okay, the teams that are in the playoffs are the teams that are likely going to be in the playoffs, whenever 2 days could put a team from a wild card position into first place in their division, or 2 days could put a team from second to last in the conference into top 3 in their division. So I agree with you. It's going to take a little bit longer. Christmas, maybe there is some movement that happens here between Thanksgiving, American Thanksgiving, and Christmas, because there's a lot of games to be played. I mean, look at the Penguins' schedule over the next couple of weeks. They play games almost every single day. Weekends are almost exclusively back-to-backs. There's a lot of hockey to be played in a short period of time here that can sometimes make or break a team. So in the Penguins' case, I think it's a really important stretch here to see what they're going to be. But as you point out, it could be that for the entire conference. So I like your thought here, Patrick. I like the thought of maybe we have to wait till Christmas this year, because everybody is, within an arm's length of each other in the Eastern Conference. And now the point you make about Philip Hollander is a great one, because we talk about, you're out Rickard Rakell, you're out Justin Brazeau, you're out Rutger McGroarty, which is another one that I agree that I think that not enough people are talking about. Like Rutger McGroarty, especially seeing the way he's playing now, coming back from an injury. If he had never been injured in the offseason, and I know ifs and buts, there's a lot of sayings about it, but if he was never injured in the offseason, he probably would have been a top 6 winger to start this year for the Penguins. And if he could have been healthy there, how much different would that top 6 have looked? How much different would the start of the year have looked? That way, you could have probably started Rickard Rakell on the third line with Ben Kindel and Ville Koivunen, and maybe you had Tommy Novak with Blake Lizotte and Connor Dewar. Maybe that was your lineup coming into the season. But I digress to that point, because you're mentioning Philip Hollander, a player who came into the season coming off of a very, very impressive year in the Swedish Professional League last year. One of the best players, one of the leading scorers of that entire league last year. He comes over, and while, yes, he wasn't putting up eye-popping numbers, the likes of Justin Brazeau, the likes of Anthony Mantha, the likes of, Sidney Crosby early in the season, he was playing really good on that third line. He was a big reason as to why Ben Kindel had such a hot start as well, because Kindel and Hollander and Novak early in the season were just absolutely crushing teams when it came to expected goals and all the underlyings, but they were also crushing teams on the scoreboard. They were outscoring opponents when on the ice every single game, it seemed like. So I think I agree with you. It's a huge loss for Philip Hollander to not be on this team. He's a massive piece to their bottom 6 or middle 6, because even when he went up to play with Sidney Crosby for those handful of games before they made the switch to Kindel, I thought he looked like he fit, right? He's a grinder. He can be, but he also has that vision. He has that soft touch with his passing. So I really, really thought that he got off to a great start, and it's very unfortunate that he's going to be out here the next couple of months with just a health issue that is scary. It is scary anytime you hear the words blood clot, but hopefully he's doing well, and hopefully we see him come back healthier and better than ever, because the way he looked early in this season, he was an everyday NHLer. And for somebody who the story had been he struggled to stay at this level. To come in and immediately this season look like an everyday NHLer, it was impressive, man. And hopefully he comes back, and when he does, comes back soon-ish. It's a long timetable, but hopefully when he comes back, he gets that opportunity to pick up where he left off, and somebody didn't take his spot in the meantime, because I want to see more of Philip Hollander. But that's a wrap for the mailbag portion of this episode. Thank you to everybody that submitted a question. Remember, if you want to submit a question for next week's mailbag, to either drop it in the comment section below here, or on Tuesday, we'll put out a post on our community page on Tip of the Ice-Burgh on YouTube. We'll also put out a post on our X page at Ice-Burgh Podcast. Make sure you just drop a comment in there, and we'll try to get to as many. If possible, we'll get to all of them, but we'll get to as many as we can on the weekly mailbag episode. But we're going to take a quick break. When we return, the weekly power rankings for the second time this season. Welcome back to the Tip of the Ice-Burgh podcast. Thank you again to everybody that submitted questions for the mailbag. I want to build that out and make it bigger and bigger every week. Like, I want to get to the point where sometimes I'm going to be sitting here for 2 hours answering all of your questions. So just keep throwing them in there. I'm going to make sure I try to keep grabbing them from all the different places, and we get to answer as many, if not every single question that you guys submit. But I do want to close this show out, as I'm going to try to do every single Thursday episode, with the Penguins power rankings. And this week, man, there was a shakeup. I did my initial power rankings last week, and honestly, when I looked at it and then I saw the 2 games that happened last Friday and Saturday, I said, well, the power ranking segment might just be, well, nothing's happened, so the power rankings are the same. But luckily, Wednesday provided a little bit of clarity for me. So I'm going to shake up my power rankings a little bit. One person that's dropped is Artur Shilov's. I still think he's been really good, but I think there's other people that earned spots above him. He was an honorable mention, aka the 6th spot last week. So I'm just going to drop him out of the rankings, but he's still in the top 10 in my eyes. I have 2 honorable mentions this week. One that was in the top 5 last week, but has dropped down a little bit, and not for lack of performance on his end, but more so performance on other players' ends that have jumped Ben Kindel. And that's exactly who it is. I still think at 18 years old, he is showing you way more than you could have ever expected. And he's going to be floating around this top 5 until he has a drastic drop. Like, he's going to be an honorable mention or in the top 5 for a very long time, because he's built up a lot of equity with me when it comes to this. So I still have him as an honorable mention, excuse me. And one other player that I can't believe I didn't mention, because I have just been blabbering about how excited I am about how well this guy has been playing, is Parker Wotherspoon. Right? Last week I talked about Erik Karlsson and how he's just a different player. Well, a large part of that is Parker Wotherspoon. And you saw it again on Wednesday night. Just another tremendous performance by 28. He brings the physicality, which is something I didn't really expect. It's not overly physical, but he uses his frame effectively. And that's all you can ask for from a defensive defenseman. You see the body you have, use it to your advantage. And that's what Parker Wotherspoon does. And he does it in a way that doesn't put him out of position as well. So I really like Parker Wotherspoon. It's just something about guys wearing 28 and playing next to a superstar defenseman in Pittsburgh. They make me feel good because they're good at their job. And that's what I think of Parker Wotherspoon. So honorable mentions, both Ben Kindel and Parker Wotherspoon. Another change from last week as we start into the top 5 here, Bryan Rust is going to bounce down 1 spot. And similar to what I said about Ben Kindel, similar to what I said about Artie Shilov's, it's not as much what he's done, because he scored a huge goal on Wednesday night. That goal on the next shift following the tying goal from Buffalo was massive. If he doesn't score that goal in that moment, I'm not sure the Penguins walk away as the winners, because they had no momentum going. So the Penguins get a good shift there. It's finished off by a dogged goal by Bryan Rust. He was a dog on a bone with that loose puck in the offensive zone, and it's just the type of play that we kind of expect from him. So that got him off the schneid. He had been on a 5-game point drought going into that one, so you saw him look to the heavens and just kind of feel that sense of relief. Hopefully that sets him on a run here. As I mentioned earlier in the show, the Penguins, they need a little bit more of that offensive flair from really every corner of their lineup. So Bryan Rust at number 5. At number 4, making his season debut in the Penguins power rankings. And a welcome back to Penguins goaltender Tristan Jarry. He was really good before his injury. And now you have Kevin Weeks putting out the eye emoji saying something to watch. Tristan Jarry to the Edmonton Oilers. I'll believe it when I see it. Kevin Weeks, in my recent memory, has not been hitting on a lot of these. So it makes sense. It's something that's been talked about for a long time. But at the same time, if you're the Penguins, you look at Tristan Jarry the way he's playing right now, and yeah, you could move off of him. Artur Shilovs has been good this year. Sergei Murashov looks like he's, if not ready, close to being ready to kind of take on the NHL level. But right now, as long as he's here, he's in the top 5. I mean, he had himself a great October. The only bad period he really had was that last period on November 3rd when they were playing in Toronto and they gave up the 3-goal lead. It's because he was playing through an injury. So a healthy Tristan Jarry has been a all-star version of Tristan Jarry. He had a stellar return for a second. I thought he was going to get the shutout yesterday, but the Penguins defense just kind of hung him out to dry in the third period. But still, 28 saves on 30 shots in his return, and that is enough for me to say this guy is in the top 5. This guy is on my power rankings list, and he's at number 4. 3, 2, and 1, I'm going to cut to the chase here. 3, 2, and 1 are the exact same as last week, and those guys have separated themselves a little bit from 4, 5 in the honorable mentions and the rest of the lineup here. But Erik Karlsson is going to stay at number 3, and I'm not going to lie, guys. I was this close to trying to move around the top 3 so he could be 1 or 2. After seeing what he did last night, after seeing the pass that he made last night to Kevin Hayes and what would eventually be the game-winning goal, I was like, man, how can I make this guy a number 3 on any ranking right now? Because he is just playing at, honestly, his Norris Trophy level from a couple seasons ago. The playmaking he's had, the defensive play that he's had. You look at some of the plays he made last night, and it's an unrecognizable player to what Erik Karlsson was in year 2 and year 1 with the Pittsburgh Penguins. So I struggled keeping him at 3, but the reason that I kept him at 3 is because look at who's at 1 and 2. Like, look at the players right now. Sidney Crosby going to stay at number 2. And again, razor-thin margin as he continues to hunt down Mario Lemieux's franchise record in scoring. And at number 1, I'm going to keep Evgeni Malkin on that list. I thought he had the game winner on Saturday against Seattle, and he probably should have. But he's somebody who now we're starting to see the goals start to come in for him. The assists were the early portion of the season as he was feeding Justin Brazeau and Anthony Mantha as they started racking up the goal totals. But Evgeni Malkin's starting to find that goal-scoring touch, and whenever he gets on a roll like that, he's one of the hardest players in the league to stop, even at the age of 39. So let's run through the list again. Honorable mentions, Parker Wotherspoon and Ben Kindel. 5th place on my power rankings is Bryan Rust, as he now starts to gain momentum back and hopefully climbs this list once again. Tristan Jarry debuts for this season at number 4. Erik Karlsson sticks at 3. Sidney Crosby at number 2, but barely, kind of a 1B, 1A situation. Sidney Crosby at 1B for the time being on my list, and Evgeni Malkin at the number 1 spot because, hey, listen, we're not doing that. We're just going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So Crosby's at number 2. Evgeni Malkin is at number 1. Let me know in the comment section what you guys think of my power rankings, and also let me know what your power rankings are. It's a lot of fun to see you guys throwing them out there and see where we differ on opinion when it comes to the Pittsburgh Penguins. But that's going to do it for this episode of the Tip of the Ice-Burgh. Once again, happy Thanksgiving to all of our listeners in the United States, and it's going to be interesting, the remainder of the calendar year of 2025. A lot of hockey to go. Hopefully Wednesday was a sign of things to come for the Penguins. But that's going to do it for this one. We'll see you guys next time.